The buzzing of the fluorescent lights was the only constant sound in Sector 7, Lab C-12, a hum that had burrowed into my skull and set up residence years ago. I was Elias Vance, just another cog, a biochemist with a low-level clearance, pushing molecules around for Omnicorp. My life outside these sterile walls was simple. A small apartment, pre-made meals, the same jog route every morning. But in here, there was always something lurking, something humming below the surface of the mundane. It was late, past midnight. Most of the other scientists had packed up, leaving me with the ghost shift and the low thrum of the facility. Dr. Evans, though, he was still there, hunched over his workstation a few bays down. He was a chronomark sample again, our prize, our ancient piece of something we barely understood. I remember glancing up at my monitor, the one linked to Evans's observation feed. Odd, I muttered, just to myself, because there was no one else to hear, really. The bioluminescence on the sample, that faint, otherworldly glow, it seemed brighter than usual tonight. Pulsing, almost. And then there was Evans. He was staring into the biocontainment unit, his face close to the viewport. Not focused, not like he usually was, sketching calculations in his head. No, his eyes, they just seemed to be looking through it, past it, at nothing at all. He kept working, though, manipulating the robotic arms with practiced ease. But there was a beat off, a flicker of delay between his thought, or what should have been his thought, and the action. A blink that came a second too late. I shook my head, tried to clear the image. Probably just tired, Elias, I told myself. You, me, Evans, we're all just tired. There's nothing strange. Minutes later, the hum of the lab felt heavier, thicker. My own console, usually cool, started to warm beneath my fingertips, an unnatural heat. The screen flickered, not a normal glitch, but a chaotic dance of scrambled characters, like static had found its way into the very code. Something's off, I whispered, the words swallowed by the sterile air. I reached for my headphones, plugged them into the comms port, hoping for a clear connection to Central. All I got was a rush of white noise, not a steady hiss, but something almost like a whisper. Then a deep, ragged breath. A shudder went through me. Just interference, I tried to convince myself, my voice a little too loud in my own ears. Omnicorp lines are always bad. Then I saw it. A faint sheen of greenish-dark liquid, almost iridescent, seeping from under the sealed door of Dr. Evans's lab bay. It oozed across the polished floor, a slow, oily tide. There was a smell, too, something metallic, like blood and ozone, but with an underlying sweetness, sickly, like rotting fruit. I took a step back, the sound of my dress shoes on the floor echoing back at me, not quite right. It was like a ghost step, a second one, lagging behind my own. My heart started to beat a little faster. No, this wasn't right. The door to Evans's bay burst open then, the automatic seal hissing, not loud enough, not quick enough. And it wasn't Evans, not anymore, anyway. It was tall, gangly, its skin a sickly pale green. Blue-black veins pulsed and stretched beneath the surface, like roots trying to claw their way out. From one of its shoulders, a mass of soft, grayish tissue had erupted, drooping, swaying slightly. Its eyes, they were Evans' eyes, I knew them, but they held no light, no recognition. They were just dull, flat. But its mouth, that was the thing. It stretched too wide, a grin that went from ear to ear, somehow tearing at the flesh. It made no sound, no growl, no scream, just that silence. And then a low, sickening crackle, the sound of bone grinding on bone, as it slowly, deliberately turned its head towards me. The smell hit me then, a punch to the gut, ozone, and something putrid, like meat left out in the summer sun, but worse. I felt something on my face, like strands of a spider web clinging to my skin, tickling. But there was nothing there. I yelled then, not a word, just a guttural sound, pure panic ripping from my throat, raw and uncontrolled. I stumbled back, my legs tangling, and I went down hard. The thing raised an arm, those fingers, long and impossibly thin, reaching. And then, from the walls, from the very air around me, a voice, a strange, echoing current of sound, scraped against my ears. "Elias, don't run." It layered, distorted, and I couldn't tell if it was Evans or something else. My mind reeled. "No way, that's not him," I mumbled, scrambling backward on the floor. "No, that's not Evans." I don't know how I got to my feet, but I did. I was running, pushing through the lab, past monitors still flashing red silently. Figures in Omnicorp tactical gear were already converging, weapons raised, firing at other gangly forms that were now appearing, swaying in the fluorescent light. The smell of ozone wasn't just a whiff now. It was a tide, a physical force pushing against me. I glanced through one of Omnicorp Complex's reinforced windows, and the Nevada night sky was not the familiar black anymore. A faint blue band was spreading across it, like a vast bruise forming on the canvas of the cosmos itself. My fingers brushed against the data drive tucked into my lab coat pocket, the one I'd snatched from my desk in the chaos. It felt strangely warm, vibrating with a gentle hum. A pressure built in my ears, making them ring, like I was diving deep underwater. I burst through the final security gate, a screech of tearing metal my only companion. As I fled, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Unknown number. I pulled it out, thumb hovered over the delete button. The screen was a mess of corrupted characters, pure gibberish. But then one word, stark and clear, pulsed brighter than the rest. Running. I looked back at the Omnicorp complex. Blue flames, not orange, not red, licked at the structure, consuming it in a sickly, unnatural glow. They know. They saw me. That was the last thing I thought, a cold certainty, before I threw myself into my beat-up sedan and jammed the accelerator to the floor. The desert highway stretched out before me, an endless ribbon of asphalt under a sky that was still bruised blue. I drove like a maniac, the old engine roaring, a desperate lullaby. I fumbled with the radio, desperate for news, for a human voice, for anything normal. But all I got was static, a harsh, crackling hiss, punctuated by fragmented, distorted sounds, like conversations happening behind a thick sheet of glass. Whispers, really. I punched the scan button, frantically, until, miraculously, it landed on a jazz station. A familiar melody, Dave Brubeck's Take 5. My mom used to play that. A tiny, fragile bubble of relief swelled in my chest. At least something was normal. I hummed along, a wordless melody, trying to lose myself in the rhythm. Then, right in the middle of the saxophone solo, a voice, flat, mechanical, utterly without inflection, broke through the music, shattering the fragile peace. "Elias, you listen to that too much. It's old." The radio clicked, a long, drawn-out hiss, and then silence.
I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. "No way," I whispered, my breath catching in my throat. It wasn't just in the lab. It wasn't just in the sky. It was here. It was everywhere. And it was listening. It knew. I kept driving, the lights of Omnicorp receding in my rearview mirror, fading into a sickly blue glow on the horizon. My pursuers were still there, those flashing lights, distant but relentless. I floored it, the ancient car complaining loudly. But something was off with the rearview mirror itself. I kept catching it, my own reflection. It was always a fraction of a second behind. I'd turn the wheel, and my reflection in the mirror would lag, then catch up. I blinked, and for a terrifying, drawn-out moment, my reflection's eyes stayed open, looking back at me, before they finally mirrored my own action. I whipped my head around to confront nothing but the empty back seat. When I twisted back, it was normal again. Ahead, a highway sign, green with bold white letters. I saw them clear as day. Then they began to shift, to swim across the metal, rearranging themselves. I forced myself to slow down, to read. Stop. Look. Listen. They are here. My hands were shaking, trembling, so hard I could barely hold the wheel steady. The whole car began to vibrate, not with the thrum of the engine, but with a different rhythm, an internal pulse that felt alien. I drove until the sunrise, pastel and indifferent, painted the edge of the desert. I pulled into the first shabby motel I saw, a forgotten place with a neon sign that buzzed even louder than the lights in Lab C-12. Inside, the room was small, smelled faintly of stale cigarettes and cheap disinfectant.
I flicked on the single lamp. A weak yellow glow washed over the stained, peeling wallpaper. I shrugged off my dirty lab coat, tossing it onto the sole armchair in the room. It landed with a soft thump. I turned to get some water from the rusty tap, my body heavy with exhaustion, every muscle screaming. Then I heard it, a soft rustling sound from behind me, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. I spun around. My lab coat on the chair wasn't the same. A faint greenish streak, like mold or something worse, had begun to bloom from the fabric itself. It wasn't dirt. It was spreading, slowly, silently, creeping up the armrest, across the worn fabric of the chair, forming a symbol I didn't recognize, something organic and grotesque. It was growing. I recoiled, stumbled back, my eyes darting around the small, cramped room. A sudden chill, icy and sharp, swept through the space, even though the window was closed, sealed shut. My gaze fell upon a hairline crack in the wallpaper near the ceiling. It warped and twisted, and for a moment, just a split second, it looked like a face, a gaunt, watching face, its eyes dark pits. My gaze dropped to my right hand, still trembling. I looked at my knuckles, at the blue veins that crisscrossed the back of my hand. One of them, a thick one, near my thumb, seemed slightly greener now. Just a bare hint of emerald. It wasn't much, just a shade. But I saw it. It was there. The buzzing of the motel room's neon sign drilled into my skull, a higher pitch than the lab's, but just as relentless. I hadn't slept, couldn't. Every time my eyes closed, I saw Evans's stretched grin, felt that cold spiderweb brush against my face. My hand. I kept looking at it. That faint green shimmer under the skin, near the thumb. Just a trick of the light, I told myself, or maybe
Maybe some chemical exposure from the Omnicorp lab. Yeah, that made sense. I clicked on the TV, desperate for noise, for anything normal. The local news was on, some cheerful blonde woman talking about a new downtown initiative. My eyes scanned the room. Stained wallpaper, chipped paint, the lab coat still on the armchair, the greenish bloom now a little larger, spreading like a complex lace pattern. I looked away, didn't want to think about it. And in other news, the anchor said, her voice bright, almost too bright, health authorities are urging calm amidst reports of a new, rapidly spreading viral illness. Symptoms include extreme lethargy, paleness, and in some, rare cases, usual skin discoloration. A blurry video clip played behind her. A forest. It looked wrong. The trees were a strange shade of gray, their leaves brittle, like something fossilized. And there were patches of what looked like blue-green fungus, pulsing softly, almost breathing. I squinted, leaning closer to the screen. Not moving, really. Not breathing. Just the static of the old TV. Then the video froze. The anchor's image stalled, a fake smile plastered on her face. Her lips kept moving, though. I could see them, forming words, but no sound came out. Just a faint, rhythmic clicking, like an old clock running backward, ticking inside the TV speakers. Or it sounded like it. My scalp tightened. Probably just a glitch, I mumbled, tapping the side of the set. Budget cuts, always budget cuts. I waited. The clicking continued, almost inviting. I switched channels. Static. Everywhere. Just the faint, rhythmic click. I turned the set off. Silence. No, not really silence. Just my own rapid breathing and the buzz of the neon sign outside. I needed supplies, food, and some strong painkillers for the headache that felt like it was splitting my skull. I grabbed the data drive from the table, tucked it deep into my pants pocket. It felt warm, always warm, a strange comfort. The street felt different, quieter than it should have been for a Tuesday morning. The air had a damp, earthy smell, even here in the city. I walked past what used to be a small public garden, the kind with bright red petunias and yellow marigolds. Now, the flowers, there was this layer of thick, blue-green mold, like velvet fuzz, covering them all. And it was moving, just slightly, but moving. A slow, rhythmic expansion and contraction of the mold itself, as if each flower, each petal, was inhaling and exhaling. My gut twisted. A woman with a shopping cart clattered past me, her eyes fixed on something only she could see.
Her mouth was slack, repeating a phrase over and over, dull and flat, like a broken record. Sow, reap, assimilate. A cold, damp breath seemed to hit my face as she passed, a sudden gust of air that wasn't there a second before. I pulled back, quickened my pace. Just another homeless person, I told myself, my voice a little too loud in my own head. Rambling happens all the time. I kept my eyes fixed ahead, didn't look at the flowers again, didn't want to. The street ahead was blocked, barricades. Armed guards in hazmat suits, not Omnicorp, but something official, city or state. I stopped, pulled back into the shadow of a closed storefront. My heart hammered against my ribs. What the hell was going on? I looked up. In the distance, between two ordinary concrete high-rises, something was growing. No, not growing. It was the buildings, or on them. Dark green, soft tissue structures, like immense bloated tumors, were sprouting from the facades,
stretching between them, expanding and contracting with that slow, unsettling rhythm I'd seen on the flowers. The entire skyline was erupting into an organic horror. The smell hit me then, a punch to the gut. Ozone, metallic, but with the sickening sweetness of rotting meat, thick and cloying. It was everywhere. An ambulance, its siren warped and sputtering, tore past the barricade, heading further into the city. The back door, I saw it. It had sprung open, and a human arm, pale and thin, with veins like gnarled tree roots, was sticking out, waving slowly, weakly. Not a wave for help, but something else. A final, desperate dance. Then I heard it. A whisper, but not from any direction. It came from the air, from the concrete, from the blooming organic structures themselves. It layered itself, 1,000 voices melding into one, deep and resonant, yet still a whisper. Welcome, Elias. You are the fire bearer. I stopped breathing, the air caught in my throat. Fire bearer. That's what Omnicorps called the project. The one I worked on. The one I stole the data from. I looked down at the data drive in my pocket. It wasn't just warm now, it was practically burning, a searing heat against my thigh. They knew, they really knew, not just my name, but what I carried, what I had done. They know, I said out loud, the words barely a rasp. They know my purpose. The city, the sick, living city, seemed to resonate. I ducked into a narrow alleyway, my legs shaking, pressing myself against a grimy brick wall. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling with the screen. I had to call someone, someone real. I found a number, an old contact at Omnicorps, someone I thought I could still trust. A low-level researcher named Miller. He was probably still alive. Probably. I hit call. My fingers trembled so violently I almost dropped the phone. It rang, once, twice, then a click. Mr. Vance? The voice on the other end was stretched, slow, almost bored. Just hold on. We know about the information you have. My heart pounded. I put the phone on speaker, pressed it against my ear until it hurt. We're sending someone to pick you up, the voice continued, smoother now, somehow more confident. Don't worry. But that wasn't right. That wasn't Omnicorps' usual line, not at all. And then I heard it. A deep, very faint exhalation on the other end of the line. A sound like a gigantic animal, asleep but breathing. A slow, heavy pulse. It wasn't Miller's breath. It was something else, something filling the space behind his words. How do you know where I am? I whispered, my voice barely audible. You've always been here with us, Elias. The phone in my hand started to get hot, burning, like the data drive. I stared at the screen. No number. The caller ID just glowed with one stark, green-tinged word. Yourself. I screamed, a strangled sound that tore from my throat, and hurled the phone against the brick wall. It shattered. I ran, blindly, stumbled out of the alley and into another abandoned building, a shell of what used to be a warehouse. I plunged into the darkness, gasping for air, the smell of ozone and damp earth clinging to my clothes. I slumped against a cold, gritty wall, trying to control my breathing. I closed my eyes, tried to remember something safe. My mother's face. That gentle smile, her arms around me, a memory of warmth, of peace. But even that image, that last refuge, wouldn't stay stable.